My life with Ethan began when I was barely 20. He had a smile that could light up a room and a way with words that made me feel like I was the only person in it. Back then, my world was small and my pockets were empty. I had dreams, but no car, no house, no clear path forward. He looked at me one evening and said, "Let's build a life together, Clara." I hung on to every word. 6 months later, we were married. It was a whirlwind, but I didn't question it. All I ever wanted was to be loved, to have a family to call my own. I truly believed love was the answer to everything. The first few years were a quiet symphony of simple joys. We found a little apartment on the edge of town. Ethan worked odd jobs, and I was a sales associate at a department store. Money was tight, but my heart was full. I found happiness in the small things, like cooking our meals from scratch and washing our clothes by hand, dreaming of the day our small home would be filled with the laughter of children. And soon it was. First came Lily, then Ben, then sweet Sophie, and finally little Leo. 4 beautiful children, 4 tiny hearts that filled our home with a chaotic, messy, wonderful love. My days became a blur of activity. I was the master of breakfast, the packer of lunches, the walker to school. I was the keeper of scraped knees and the kisser of sleepy foreheads. I poured every ounce of my being into them. But as I gave more, Ethan gave less. It started subtly. He'd come home late, blaming long hours at work. Then he started sleeping in, his days blurring into a haze of inactivity. Eventually, he stopped working altogether. The bed became his fortress, the television his companion, and his phone a constant distraction. "I'm tired," was his constant refrain. When I'd ask for help with the children, he'd say, "I put in my time for years. It's my turn to rest." I wanted to scream that years was a long time ago, but the words always caught in my throat. His interactions with the children became rare and sharp. A spilled glass of juice from Lily earned a roar of anger. Too many questions from Ben were met with a harsh, "Be quiet." Sophie grew timid around him, and baby Leo would wail the moment Ethan entered the room. I was on my own. I became a solitary son in their small universe. I rose before dawn, prepared their meals, dressed them, and walked them to school. I'd work a full shift, then return to make dinner, tackle homework, manage bath time, clean the kitchen, and finally tuck them into bed. All the while, Ethan watched from the sofa, a silent, unmoving spectator to my exhaustion. He never offered a hand, never asked how I was coping. One evening, I confessed, "I'm so tired, Ethan." He glanced away from the screen, his expression flat. "You chose this," he said, before his attention returned to the TV. One night, the dinner burned. I was juggling a fussy Leo on my hip while trying to stir a pot of rice. The acrid smell filled the kitchen. Ethan appeared in the doorway, his nose wrinkled in disgust. "You can't even get a simple meal right?" He grabbed the pot and slammed it into the sink, the clang echoing in the silence before he stormed out. I wanted to collapse, but Leo's small body was still clinging to mine. My only sanctuary was the cold tile of the bathroom floor after everyone was asleep. I'd sit in the dark, a towel pressed to my mouth to muffle the sounds of my heart breaking. I cried until there was nothing left inside me but a hollow ache. Then I'd splash cold water on my face and creep back into bed. I stayed because I felt I had no choice. We couldn't afford 2 separate homes. I had no car, No family nearby, and no friends who could possibly shelter a mother and 4 children. I was trapped. I clung to the flimsy excuse that at least they have a father. But it was a lie. Ethan wasn't a father. He was a ghost haunting our home, a cold, silent, resentful presence who watched his own family as if we were intruders. The truth hit me when Ben came home from school with a crayon drawing of our family. He had drawn me, Lily, Sophie, Leo, and himself, all holding hands under a smiling sun. Ethan was nowhere in the picture. "Where's Dad?" I asked gently. Ben shrugged. "He's always on the couch." That night, sleep wouldn't come. The blinders I had worn for so long finally fell away. My children weren't just living with a lazy father, they were living in fear. They were quiet, cautious, and constantly on edge. They came to me for everything, never him. A few days later, Lily, my eldest at 9, accidentally dropped a ceramic bowl. The shatter was deafening. Ethan charged into the kitchen. "Are you an idiot?" he bellowed. She froze, her eyes wide with terror. I stepped between them. "She's just a child, Ethan." He turned his fury on me. "Don't you dare talk to me like that." I stood firm. "Don't you dare talk to her like that." He stormed out, slamming the front door so hard the walls shook. I knelt and held Lily, whispering, "It's okay, you're safe." But I knew deep down that she wasn't. When Sophie's shoes became too tight, her toes curling in pain, I mentioned it to Ethan. "She needs new shoes," he replied. "So go buy them. What do you want me to do about it?" "There isn't enough money this week," I explained. He scoffed. "Then maybe she should stop growing so fast." That night, I held Sophie as she cried herself to sleep. One morning, a sharp pain shot through my back from a long shift the day before. I struggled to bend down to pick up Leo. Ethan watched me, a smirk on his face. "You're moving like an old lady." "My back is killing me," I said. He laughed. "Probably from all the nagging you do." The final blow came from 7-year-old Sophie. "Mom," she asked quietly later that week, "why don't you leave him?" I stopped what I was doing, my heart seizing in my chest. "What do you mean, honey?" Her gaze fell to the floor. "Because Dad doesn't like us." In that moment, I saw our life through her eyes, and the illusion of a family shattered completely. That evening, when Ethan complained about dinner being late, I didn't respond. I just looked at him, really looked at him, searching for the man who once promised to build a life with me. There was no love in his eyes. Not for me, not for our children. "Nothing, cat got your tongue," he sneered. "I'm thinking," I said softly. "Good," he replied. "You do too much talking anyway." The urge to pack our bags and run was overwhelming, but the questions remained. Where would we go? How would we survive? I was terrified, but something inside me had shifted. I was no longer protecting my children by staying. I was sacrificing them. Leaving was no longer a question of if, but how. I needed a plan. For now, I stayed. But in my heart, I had already walked out the door. My routine remained the same. Wake up, breakfast, school, work, home, dinner, homework, bed. At my job, I was a different person. I smiled, I was helpful, I was efficient. No one knew the weight I carried. The walk home with the kids was my daily reprieve. Sophie would chatter about her art class, Ben about a book he was reading, and Leo would just hold my hand, his small fingers a comforting anchor. Their voices were a balm on my wounded spirit. But the moment we opened our front door, a chill would descend. Ethan would be on the couch, the TV blaring. No hello, no how was your day? Just a heavy, oppressive silence. One evening, Ben dropped his plate and food splattered across the floor. Are you blind? Ethan yelled, making Ben flinch. I rushed to clean it up. It was an accident, I said, my voice shaking. You're too soft on them, he muttered before retreating to the living room. I held Ben close and whispered, It's not your fault, but I saw the fear lingering in his eyes. That night, I watched the moon from our kitchen window and thought about disappearing into the night. But the practicalities held me back. Then, one day at school pickup, Lily asked, Mom, do other dads smile? The question was a punch to the gut. Yes, sweetie, I managed to say. Some do. I wish Dad smiled, she said wistfully. That was it. I asked my manager for more hours for weekend shifts. Are you okay? He asked, a flicker of concern in his eyes. I forced a smile. Just saving up. My body ached constantly, my feet were always sore, but every dollar I earned was a brick in our path to freedom. Ethan noticed. Why are you working so much? He demanded. Trying to get away from me. I didn't answer. There was no point. When Leo got sick with a fever, I was up with him for 2 straight nights. Ethan never once came to check on him. The next morning, exhausted, I asked, Can you just watch him for an hour so I can rest? I'm not a babysitter, he grumbled and walked out of the house. I sank to the floor, the loneliness a crushing weight. The final straw was a spelling test. Sophie came home, her face beaming, a perfect score written in red at the top of the page. Show Dad, she urged. I took the paper to Ethan. He glanced at it for a second. That's kids' stuff. I could do that with my eyes closed. Sophie overheard. The light in her eyes died. That night I promised her, You are so smart. Don't ever let anyone make you feel otherwise. The next weekend, while cleaning, I asked Ethan to move his feet so I could sweep. Later, he grunted. I swept around him. You think you're better than me now, don't you? He said, his voice laced with venom. He stood up, towering over me, his eyes burning with rage. Don't talk back to me. I flinched, my heart hammering against my ribs, but he just stormed away, slamming the bedroom door. That night, I sat at the kitchen table and counted the money I had secretly stashed away. It wasn't much, but it was a start. It was hope. For 3 more months, I saved every spare dollar. I found a small, 2-room apartment for rent on the other side of town. It was modest, but when I called the landlady, her kind voice felt like a good omen. The night before we left, I packed in silence after the kids were asleep, hiding bags of clothes and toys. I told them our secret plan, and their solemn nods told me they understood. The next morning, with Ethan still asleep, I woke them before sunrise. We moved like shadows, slipping out the front door into the cool morning air. I took one last look at the house that had been my prison. I felt no sadness, only relief. On the bus, Lily squeezed my hand. Is this our freedom day, Mom? She whispered. Yes, honey, I said, a real smile spreading across my face. It is. When the landlady handed me the keys, my hands trembled. I opened the door to our new home. It was empty. The walls were bare, but it was filled with light. The kids ran inside, their laughter echoing in the empty rooms. That night, we sat on the floor and ate sandwiches for dinner. We had no furniture, no television, no comforts, but we had peace. We had safety. We had each other. For the first time in years, our home was not filled with fear, but with love. I lay on a blanket on the floor, listening to the steady, peaceful breathing of my 4 children, and I knew we were finally free. Life is still hard. I work constantly, and my feet still ache. But my heart is light. We have less than we've ever had, but we have everything that truly matters.